Well, hello, and welcome to Rally FC. That's right, Rally FC, the Ghostwriter podcast on the Flying Cow. My name is Clay Johnson. I am your host, and as I learned in this episode, I apparently have better typing skills than middle school hacker. But that is not going to get me through this episode alone. No, I have two very special guests with me here today to help me with that. They are professional film critics, as well as personal podcasting heroes of mine. Everyone welcome William Bibbiani and Witney Seibold.
Hi there.
Hello, we are
guys,
here.
Thank you guys so much for being here with me today to talk about
No
the
worries.
show.
I was super excited to revisit the Ghostwriter movies with Nicolas Cage for you.
Oh,
And super excited.
Yeah, little different than you remember, I'm sure.
I only rewatched the first one. I'm grievously unprepared.
Oh no, the second one's a good one. You fool. Are we the 80th person to make that joke?
I think only one other person has made that joke, and he was a comic book guy, so made sense.
All right, fair enough.
And who's made reference to the Pierce Brosnan movie?
No one's making
You know what? That comes up every time I search it on YouTube, but nobody has mentioned it. I didn't know about it, so
There you go.
yeah. But yeah, little bit different than what we're talking about today. So I do have to ask you guys. It's a question I ask all of my guests. So William, Whitney, how much do you guys hate me for asking you to watch this show?
Not at all.
Look, we have our own podcast dedicated to failed television series. Even if this had been bad, which it isn't, we've seen just the dregs of what television history has to offer. We have very strong constitutions.
Yeah, this didn't even faze me. I actually had a pretty good time with a lot of this. Excuse me, I have a bit of the hiccups. I'm trying to get rid of them. But no, I didn't really watch this show when it was on. I was a little old for it. So this is actually, funnily enough, the only clip of the show I had ever seen was from this 4-part episode.
This episode, sure.
So it was actually kind of kismet. I'm like, oh, it's the cool one, the one I'm super excited to talk about.
Yeah. There are a lot of things. I will say, I mean, I grew up watching this show when it first came out, and I think it's kind of funny you thought this was too old for you because we're about the same age. But I've always kind of enjoyed things a little young for me. I still watch Disney movies, so. Well,
so do I. That's neither here nor there. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe when I was in the 90s, I had kind of a stick up my butt, and I was like, I'm watching Batman the Animated Series and Gargoyles. I don't need to watch these shows about learning and fun.
I need to watch children's programming.
No, I just want to watch Batman and Gargoyles.
Well, I was in high school when this show debuted, but I was still very occasionally. I knew about it because I was thumbing through like episodes of Bill Nye the Science Guy and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, hosted by Greg Lee, who's in this episode.
This episode? Yeah, I figured you guys would recognize him. Yeah.
So I was adjacent to it, but I never dove in with both feet.
Yeah, and it turns out I actually had a completely inaccurate idea in my head of what this show was. I don't know why I thought this, but in my head, I thought this show was about a haunted typewriter.
Oh.
I thought it was like a bunch of kids hovering around a typewriter, and the typewriter goes clickety clackety click on its own, and then it like helps them solve mysteries. I didn't realize it was like this weird,
this disembodied entity.
It gets into these weird heady sci-fi arenas. But I was completely unprepared for exactly what this was.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an odd show, especially to jump in the middle. But let's go ahead and let's talk specifically about this episode that we have today. Today we are talking about the story arc, Who is Max Mouse? And I mean, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. At the beginning of the episode, we are introduced to the concept that the school, Hurston Middle School, is being attacked by basically a computer hacker, and throughout the story they are doing more and more, basically escalating their stunts to the point that starts endangering people's lives, and the team spend the whole episode story just trying to figure out who it is so that they can stop them.
There were a lot more consequences than I thought there would be. I thought this would be more light and frilly. And actually, like, the very first thing in the episode is like someone hacks all the computers in the school, and it says, what did it say? Like, Principal Kelly is dead?
Is dead, yeah.
Which is really kind of a lot for a kid show to just suddenly pop in. And when you realize that, like, today they do an impromptu assembly. And the principal shows up and they say, I'm not dead. Everything's fine. Someone hacked the computer.
She has the most spectacular power suit.
Yes, he does.
It's like big shoulder pads with a houndstooth pattern. It looks really nice.
It's cool. But like I was watching this and I was realizing they are laughing this off. That is tantamount to a threat.
Yeah.
That is actually like a real crime that they would take incredibly seriously.
Sure.
And so yeah, that got this off on a really big roller coaster of a start, I thought.
Well, I think that the technology was so new that they were able to laugh it off. Like, imagine if, like, you're at a very small middle school and a TikTok is going around and it says that the principal is dead, but you can't like substantiate it anywhere else. That would be a prank. Not a threat.
Yeah, but it has real life consequences, though. People actually believe it. If I mean, we've all heard about that. How like there's a whole generation of people now on TikTok who are believing this conspiracy theory that Helen Keller wasn't real.
Yeah, I saw this on your Twitter today.
Yeah, like they believe that Helen Keller either was faking it or that she was only partly disabled, and like some of her disabilities were like. And it's
also, did you hear that the Titanic was a real event? And
no, it's absolutely absurd. But you realize that misinformation is, especially look at what's going on in the world right now as we record this. Misinformation is a very, very serious thing. And when you bring death into it, even hypothetical death, it's a bit more than I thought we'd be getting.
Yeah, in fact. Just tonight, just because of the world we live in, I was looking up the origin of Poe's law, which is a descriptor for the online phenomenon where you can no longer exaggerate an extreme point of view enough to where it becomes read as satire.
Yeah.
That satire and sarcasm cannot be read online unless you have to say it a lot more explicitly. And
you have to add eye roll emojis, and even then it's easy to misinterpret, because especially in social media, because people are they're only writing like a couple of sentences.
Well,
so there's no context. It's not like Twitter, it's not like we're reading like an entire article and like we're only taking one sentence out of context. And a lot of people are basically publishing. That's what Twitter is. They're publishing.
Yeah.
But they're not being edited. They're not necessarily good or clear writers. So it leads to, some real dangerous topics. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I joked on one of the earlier episodes, Ghostwriter tried to fix Twitter because there was an episode where one of the characters was really mad at someone and started writing a very angry letter. And when they were done, Ghostwriter erased it and said, "Don't you feel better? Now what do you really want to write?" And it was just like, if only more of us would have Ghostwriter erase those horrible things.
I'm telling you, man, the importance of an editor. The importance of an editor cannot be underappreciated, I think. Cannot be overstated.
And Ghostwriter is the ultimate editor.
Yeah.
Who's a famous editor? Who is Ghostwriter the ghost of? If Ghostwriter is an editor. I like to think it's like Dorothy Parker or something.
Well, Dorothy Parker wasn't an editor. I was literally just trying to think of who Dorothy Parker's editor was at the New Yorker. Was it Herbert Ross? I want to say it was Herbert Ross.
Herbert Ross.
No clue.
I might be confusing. Herbert Ross might be the name of a director.
Because Ghostwriter takes place in New York. It was filmed in New York.
In Brooklyn,
So Dorothy Parker was one of the Algonquin crowd. So makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe her ghost is hanging around. Maybe it's local. She's bored of helping these kids with mysteries.
So like we said, Max Mouse is
Harold
causing
Ross.
Harold Ross. Okay.
That was the name I was thinking of. Harold Ross.
Ghostwriter is Harold Ross.
There you go.
We're here first.
All right, well, you guys already skipped ahead to one of the segments guessing who you thought Ghostwriter was. So
way to ruin the
just knocking him
podcast,
out
Whitney.
here.
Oh, my pleasure.
But yeah, so they're dealing with these threat that Max Mouse is bringing about, and we're introduced to some different characters that present themselves as suspects, and it's really funny. I was watching this earlier. There's actually a shot during the assembly where we see the 3 people who would become suspects all sitting together. I was like, that's convenient.
Yeah. Well, listen, you have the actors in the on the set. You're just gonna throw them on there, really. Yeah. We're not gonna get like a whole bunch of extras for this.
Right.
Nonsense.
I mean, like one of them is like a kind of a returning villain. Has been the perpetrator only in one episode, and from then on has just been a red herring.
I was very much reminded of a pup named Scooby-Doo.
Sure.
If you remember, there was an animated series, everyone listening, there was an animated series called A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and it was about all the Scooby-Doo gang when they were little kids, and there was a bully in their school named Red Herring, and Fred thought it was always Red Herring. He was always who Fred thought it was going to be. And then there was one episode where it actually was Red Herring, and it blew Fred's mind. It was mind.
The episode of House where it actually was Lupus.
Exactly.
I was reminded of a segment on 321 Contact because I'm an ancient man called the Bloodhound Gang, which is where the band got their name. And it was about kid detectives who were solving mysteries. And I remember the Bloodhound Gang very well because at my elementary school during rainy days when you had to stay indoors, they would crack out that 16 millimeter projector, and they only had one episode of the Bloodhound Gang. God. It was about somebody was like unwittingly spreading pink eye among the population. And it turns out she was like preparing the salads at school. It was just
geez,
pretty wild.
It's gross.
But yeah, so our red herring character that's Calvin Ferguson. He's been in other episodes. Honestly, when I was watching this, I was a little disappointed because Calvin's not his usual self in this one. Usually he's very much the over the top theatrical villain, and he's much more downplayed in this.
Well, we get to see him at a funeral. We get to see some heart.
Yeah, we see quite a different side of Calvin in this one. His parrot Attila died, and he is approaching Lenny for the first time because we find out that apparently he has a crush on Lenny Frazier, which comes back a couple of times, but here it's mostly just used to kind of creep us all out.
In the canon of the show, I don't know how far it goes. If they do like Ghostwriter, the college years or anything, do they ever get together? Or
no. Honestly, I think with the exception of one other episode, a couple episodes from now, this is one of his last appearances.
Oh, he died.
Yes.
Attila was a warning.
it was the red parrot in the coal mine.
There you
go.
Yeah. No. Honestly, the way that they from this episode to the next one, in the next episode he actually helps them. So it looked like they were doing this slow transition to maybe him not necessarily joining the team, but being a little bit more friendly.
A redemption arc.
Right, but they never completed that, so that's as far as we got. But we're also introduced to one of our other suspects, which is Erica Dansby, played by Julia Stiles.
Julia Stiles in what may be her greatest performance.
Yeah, okay. I will say, like I said, I've rewatched this a couple of times, and the first time I was like, oh, she's, you can tell it's kind of early for her. I didn't think that much, but the more I watched it, the more I was like, she is doing really well with really clunky dialogue.
She has got, she's introduced, she's a big computer hacker. She's a computer hacker.
Yeah.
And she's also the editor of the school newspaper. And when I think it's Lainey is like trying to talk. It's Tina. Sorry, I'm bad with names. No, when Tina tries to confront her about hacker stuff, she has this like it's like the opening. Remember that one teaser from Strange Days?
Have you ever jacked in? Have you ever whatever it was?
Have you ever wire tripped? No.
I've actually got that clip.
A virgin brain. Yeah.
I actually texted some of it to you while I was watching the episode.
When it was very impressed. Let's play the clip.
Do you know anything about hackers? Can you jam with the console cowboys in cyberspace? What? Ever read Neuromancer? Huh? Ever experienced the new wave? Next wave? Dream wave? Or cyberpunk? I didn't think so. I'll handle the hacker stories.
Yeah, I was with Tina there. I was completely lost. I was like, is that stuff real?
Did a preteen Julia Stiles just try to shame someone, like, again, who is like 11 or something?
They're 13.
They're 13. Yeah. Did you just try to shame a 13-year-old for not having read Neuromancer yet? Like, wow.
Apparently. Yeah.
Wow. Like, that's the confidence, the swagger.
Well, then she says, have you heard of New Wave? Well, yeah, it's the 90s. It's, grunge replaced it. And then she says, have you heard of Next Wave? Have you heard of cyberpunk? She's wearing one of those, before they were really even in fashion, those big, tall, like raver ecstasy taking hats that you'd see at the club.
They look like two bandanas fighting each other.
Yeah, and she's got a nostril piercing, which is really edgy for junior high.
I was about to say this. I always remember this episode as being the episode that made my mother threaten to not let me watch it anymore because a girl was wearing a nose ring.
Oh my
goodness.
Yeah.
So edgy.
That's too sexy.
This was I mentioned before that I had seen a clip. This was the clip. This clip made the rounds a little while ago.
Yeah,
okay, have you ever actually like seen this episode of Ghostwriter where Julia Stiles was like this like hackers era hackers?
Yeah.
Hacker. Yeah.
I knew that the word hacker was really hip at the time. They used it in Jurassic Park the same year this series debuted. And it always felt wrong. Like it was clearly being wielded by screenwriters who weren't really clear on the concept.
Well, but it's sort of thing where it's like, I'm a hacker. Like you're just, that would be like, I don't know what it would be like. I'm a basketball player. Like, I don't know, I just play basketball. What do you do? Like it's about like claiming this, not just claiming an identity, claiming a hip now and wow, very trendy identity.
Yeah.
But it was usually said by people that you could tell they had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah. In fact, the movie Hackers from '95 was such. It was laughed out of theaters at the time. I remember a lot of people making fun of that movie.
Not taken seriously.
You watch it now, it's like, okay, the technology, it never looked that way. And I think the filmmaker did a really good job of making it look visually dynamic. Mm-hmm. I think they tried something really similar with Ghostwriter, where we get to see the ghost in cyberspace. With this really wonderful early 90s TV level CG. A look I've always been kind of fond of just because it hit me at the right time. Because that's more interesting than watching somebody sit at a computer typing really slowly, which they also do in this episode of Ghostwriter.
Yes. Yeah, this show is infamous for, because it is educational. It's all about reading and writing and things like that. So anytime they do something like that, they have to not only, like you would do in a normal show, maybe say it or something like that, but they have to show it being written or typed out. And it's, it gets a little... Gets a little annoying after a while.
I imagine the filmmakers were a little frustrated at times because they're clearly trying to tell an actual story, like an actual mystery with actual like suspense and stakes. But then every once in a while, it's just like, hacker, I'm going to write that down. Q. C.
I found this piece of paper. It has alpha, beta. What are these things? Look, I watched Star Trek. I knew what those things were when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I get all excited because it's got gum on it. Like, of course, the hacker probably chews gum, and I'm like, it's in a trash can. People could have just dropped gum in that trash can. There's no. That's so circumstantial.
God. You ever see the film Cop Dog?
No, I haven't seen the Cop Dog.
Cop Dog is a mystery about a dog that dies and becomes a dog ghost and doesn't help with the mystery. But one of the plot points is they find like the villain's hideout and there's a lot of gum stuck on a tree. So they have to peel the gum off of the tree and chew it. And then compare the flavor to gum they bought at the store to find out what brand the villains bought, and then check receipts to see who bought that brand. It's so stupid.
Did the chewing gum flavor on that tree overnight?
I'm not sure if you've ever chewed gum you've peeled off of the bottom of a table, but it keeps its flavor.
Nice. They're good.
It's good to know.
I don't have dysentery at all.
Oh, like I said, we have a third suspect, which is Janice Hall, who her biggest character trait is that no one notices her. Like literally, like the thing that's said about her all the time is, "Oh, Janice, I didn't know you were there." There's actually a scene where she surprises Lenny, and Lenny's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were there." And instead of like saying hi to her or starting a conversation, she just says bye and leaves the room. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, sometimes our heroes are jerks. That's good writing.
Look, they're 13-year-olds are not known for their social prowess, their gentleness, or their kindness.
No, I meant that. It's one of the things I liked about they didn't really do it in the movies, but in the Harry Potter books, those kids are going through puberty, and like books like 4, 5, and 6, they're jerks.
Yeah,
they're just hormonal jerks. Wow.
I've often said that the fifth one, the alternate subtitle could just be "The Year Harry Was Always Angry," because he is always about to flip out on somebody in that book.
And he's going through a lot, but also he's going through puberty.
Yeah.
I was angry at so many things. I had no reason to be angry 90% of the time. I would just walk home, throw my book bag on the ground, and my mom would be like, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I wasn't.
Yeah. Puberty hit me differently. I was never mad. I was never that guy. I was an insufferable flirt. That's how it hit me. I flirted with every single one of my classmates, male and female, regardless of their age.
There you go. How did you guys find the mystery? I mean, because I don't know, I found it fairly obvious. I mean,
well, there's
for a show that bills itself as a mystery show, their mysteries often aren't very difficult.
Well, again, it's a show for little kids, isn't it? They're teaching you to read, so I don't think that they expect you to handle Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy labyrinthine plots.
No, sure.
But they incorporated a variety of suspects. There were 3. One of whom was pretty obviously a red herring. The other 2 could have gone either way, really. Yeah, it was fine. The part of the episode when I realized they were starting to really run out of material is when around like episode 2, we just had to introduce out of nowhere a bullying subplot. Like, this hacker plot is not enough for a whole 4-part episode. We had to spend a lot of time on some bullying in a park.
Yeah, and I mean they do that sometimes. I mean, sometimes there will be a subplot, like a different subplot per episode. Sometimes there will be one that like runs throughout the whole story. Sometimes they won't have one at all. But the bullying subplot, I always feel weird when a show like this does a bullying subplot, because often I don't feel that the way that they deal with it is very effective, at least not in my experience.
No, there's this kid, and he's just trying to play in a park, and there's this other mean kid in the park, and he's mean, he's intimidating, and the guy's like talks to his, I guess, older brother.
He's his like mentor, like big brother kind of thing.
So friend. Okay.
Yeah.
And the guy's just like, yeah, what you got to do is stand up for yourself. And I'm like, no, that's a really oversimplified, like, adult response to bullying. Yeah. Because bullying isn't necessarily about path of least resistance. Bullying is, in many respects, it's a very psychological thing where someone's trying to make themselves feel big, and if they feel challenged, they might just get more aggressive. Yeah. So I kept seeing this a lot. I saw a lot of bullying, like storylines and PSAs or whatever, which in my experience just got me beat up more.
Yeah,
just ignore them never works.
No,
they'll just hit you in the back.
It's a challenge. Yeah. Like the goal is to hurt someone and get a rise out of them, and if they make it harder, it's not about like it's if it becomes more difficult, it just increases the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, you're not getting over me. Like, I'm going to make your life a living hell. And so they did. They made my life a living hell.
Yeah. This was that weird period in the 1990s where they were first trying to address a lot of these more serious topics on television.
Sure. Yeah.
This was the 70s after school specials leaking into mainstream entertainment.
Yeah.
Right.
Where
a very special episode of Mr. Belvedere.
Where they found a way to write some of those very special concepts from 70s TV movies just into mainstream stories.
Yeah.
And they were always incredibly mawkish. But at the time, they were really going for something super progressive and educational.
Yes and no. I mean, it depends. Like a lot of the time when they were trying to do a marijuana episode, a lot of that was basically just
scare films,
just government propaganda. Like, I found a joint in Little Billy's book, and there would be a close up of the joint, and then the music would get really dour, and then we cut to a commercial, and you just have to think about what that kid did. Did they ever do a marijuana episode of Ghostwriter?
They did a drug episode. It's actually coming up in a couple episodes, and it starts with marijuana, and then like 3 days later, the kid who offers him the marijuana is on like the hardest drugs you can think of. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, this show is a little inconsistent. Sometimes it handles these types of situations very well. There was actually an episode where they talked about PTSD, and they did it in actually a really creative way because they presented it in 3 different perspectives. They talked about it from a child's perspective, because those are our leads. And then they talked about it kind of like in the more medical perspective. And then they had the guy who was actually dealing with it talk about his experience with it. And, they presented it in a way saying that this isn't something that can just be fixed. This is something he's gonna keep dealing with, kind of thing. And then you get something like bullying, and they try to give like a one-size-fits-all fix to it, and it's like...
I stood up to him, and he threw away my ball, but other than that, we're cool forever, and this will never be an issue again. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. No.
Very naive. I remember, it's so weird how, like... Because kids' media, people forget this sometimes or don't even think about it. It's not made by kids.
No.
It's made by adults, and sometimes adults have their heart in the right place, and sometimes their brain is somewhere else. And I feel like sometimes adults forget what it's like to be a kid, or maybe their child experiences were a bit more narrow. And as a result, when they try to tackle some issues like this, that doesn't seem like it's coming from a very genuine place.
Yeah, well, that's why there are so many stories about absentee fathers trying to make good, because the people who are writing this aren't paying attention to their kids and not really understanding their kid experiences. So they're writing these apologies in feature film form about being a bad dad. In many ways, though, Ghostwriter's heart is in the right place.
Sure.
Even though... even if the words aren't quite correct.
It's not evil. I just don't think it's very well handled.
It's also a big exemplar of how... in the 1990s, there was this big push for diversity in media, and it was always it wasn't always handled the best. We were very quick to notice when it was an all-white cast with one token minority character.
Yep.
And we started popularizing the term token to the point where South Park had a character named Token. You watch something like Captain Planet and the Planeteers, and that's like the most brazenly pandering version of looking to put diversity in your show. But something like Ghostwriter, which takes place in the real world in New York and has a very diverse main cast,
which a public school in New York would,
does it well. I mean, it might seem a little obvious from like a demographic perspective, but it seems like we're getting a lot of different representation in a show like Ghostwriter.
That's
something that I think they did pretty gracefully.
And I think they do a pretty good job of keeping the characters separate. Their voices are a little different. Their goals and ambitions are a little different.
There's not one leader. They're all sort of working as a unit.
No, I appreciate that. I actually think as an ensemble show, regardless of, because again, it's a kid's show. It's written like, if this were like a big Netflix series, people would say it's a little naive, but for what it is, it's actually pretty graceful. I think about how it handles its ensemble cast, and that's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bullying side plot aside, we do eventually find out that Max Mouse, after they have done several different things, they set a program where the alarms keep going off, and they change kids' grades and all this kind of stuff. It builds to the point eventually the alarm prank causes basically a fire wasn't attended to because the fire department was dealing with the false alarm.
A real crime,
it escalates, and so the tension is building. They're really making it very important for us to figure out who this person is. So the team,
so many vocabulary words.
Yeah.
We gotta learn so many vocabulary words so fast or we're all gonna die.
So Max Mouse challenges basically anybody to go onto an online
bulletin
chat.
Board.
The bulletin board, yes. And there's a very funny scene where the kids look around to every bulletin board in the school and then eventually figure out that it's an online bulletin board because Max Mouse actually put like a little card saying, hey, it's online.
Another one of my favorite lines of dialogue comes when one of the kids is trying out some of this cyber lingo for the first time.
Yeah.
And you can hear the quotation marks, and I actually wrote it down. If we had a handle, we could chat with the hacker on the bulletin board. Yeah, you got it.
Well, I also think, again, they're trying to teach us all of these like hacker words, it's computer terminology at a time when computers are becoming more common. But it's also absurd. Yeah,
it's absurd, and I also understand that a lot of this lingo was actually really common parlance already.
Yeah,
especially among 13-year-olds who were watching this in the 90s, they might have been on
chat rooms.
Rudimentary chat rooms already.
Yeah, I was.
Right. I mean, there's a point at which they teach us what passwords are. And I mean, I can't remember where I was in 93, but that just seems so rudimentary to me.
By that point, everyone I know had seen War Games.
Yeah. Well, and the word password extends beyond computer lingo.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, people have had passwords since,
They're making jokes about Swordfish, the password in Marx Brothers movies, for God's sake.
Right.
Yeah, but it's always so like charming to see early proto stories being told around things that we all take for granted now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's laughable. This is pretty genuine, I think. It's and I think Julia Stiles really saves it. Like her intensity is just off the charts.
Yeah, she is working so hard with this. Like I said, the dialogue feels real clunky that she's been given, but I think that she is working really hard to sell it.
It's a tough chunk of dialogue.
Yeah.
It is, because all she's really doing is posturing and throwing out as many buzzwords as the screenwriters knew at the time. At no point am I convinced that the writers have actually read Neuromancer. Maybe they did, but they never show their work. So yeah, but I think it's a wee bit of a delight. What I was more amused by is when they end up in the bulletin board in the chat room,
right?
And Max Mouse reveals, says they will do some sort of cyber favor or reveal their identity if one of the other people in the chat room beats them at a game.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, cool. What sort of games were available at the time? And it was just like word games.
Boggle.
Basically, Boggle is one of them. And I'm like, wow. Like, and they didn't.
And tic-tac-toe is another one.
Yeah.
I'm watching my 5-year-old playing like computer tic-tac-toe, and he's figuring out pretty early on, he's 5, that tic-tac-toe is just like an introduction to strategy. It's not an actual strategy game.
No, it's like peekaboo. It's just teaching you the concept that when you don't see your dad's face, your dad's still there. That's what tic-tac-toe is for gaming.
Or like a kids joke books. It's like, those aren't really funny, but they're teaching kids how a joke is supposed to sound.
Yeah, set up, payoff. These are
13-year-olds. Now, in elementary school, I was going to elementary school in the 80s, and we did have computers and playing stuff like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And there you go. We did get a little bit of a thrill from like drawing pictures on logo. So maybe there was a little bit of novelty in playing tic-tac-toe online, especially via a modem, but
it's if I have a modem and someone else has a modem, our computers can talk to each other.
It's like a phone for your computer.
And they will explain that to you in every previously on.
You know what? I'm glad they did, because these days computer technology has advanced so quickly like kids don't even understand what modems are, or like what the world was like when it was just being introduced to computers. This is a helpful time capsule in a lot of ways.
We remember when we reviewed the TV show Prophet on Cancel Too Soon. It was a 1990s thriller series, and they kept saying things like, "Oh, I'll modem that to you."
That's right. They used modem as a verb on that show.
No one ever did that. That was never a thing.
I'll modem it over. We said email. That's it. That's all we needed. That sounded futuristic enough.
It's the same number of syllables. I don't understand why.
And there was that brief trend where they put a lowercase e in front of everything before they gave up and started putting a lowercase I in front of everything.
Good times.
Now we don't have lowercase anything. I feel cheated. How come it's not iTwitter?
Give it time. Once Apple buys Twitter, it'll happen. So they have to play. What happens is they need to do the old. We're going to trace the call, and if we find out like who is on the other end of Max Mouse.
They're using Ghostwriter to trace.
And Ghostwriter is like flying through the internet, like in some kind of like cheap Tron kind of thing. And but it's the old chestnut where we have to keep them on the line long enough to trace the call, which is a trope that used to be very real, but now is completely. It always drives me nuts when a movie does it now, because they know. Like one phone call, we know who called you. Like we don't need to wait 30 seconds to trace that call. But in any case, so they have to try to pick the longest possible game. So they don't pick tic-tac-toe because that's fast. They don't pick Boggle, even though they don't call it Boggle, because it's kind of fast. They don't pick a game called Speed Trap because it's got a word speed in the title. But nor do they ever tell us what Speed Trap is. And here's the thing. I'm watching this with my wife and partner, Michelle, and we're both like, wait a minute. It's called Speed Trap. That implies that you're not going that fast. Speed Trap might have actually been the preferable way to go. But in any case, they end up going with a game called Ghost, which makes no sense to me.
No.
Because the show's called Ghostwriter and they live with a ghost?
No. I get why it's called Ghost. I don't understand. The purpose of the game is you put down a letter, and then your opponent puts down a letter, and the first person to make a word loses.
Right.
At no point in the rules does it clarify that you need to like have letters that make sense together. So why don't you just put a Q and next to a T?
No, the rule was somebody starts with a letter, and as you build, every successful thing you build has to be a word. That was the rule.
That was not clearly articulated.
So, like, one of them was B. They started with the letter B, then they said B-E.
Actually, the moment that you form a word, you lose. So, I mean, you're right. I don't really. There's nothing in the rules but I think the whole point is to get your opponent to make a word. So you have to be going towards a word. You just can't make a word before.
Right, but here's the thing, though. Their goal isn't to win the game. That doesn't matter. Their goal is to waste time.
Right. Stalling Max Mouse.
So really,
almost called him Modest Mouse.
Nice. Well, Max Mouse is anything but modest. But regardless, if the whole point is to like stall for time, then actually playing the game is a bad strategy. So that's what I was thinking, was like, just stall for time. Just put random letters on there. But alas, no one listens to me when I watch television.
No,
they
wrote beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they play the game long enough that Ghostwriter has enough time to find out who it is. And who is it?
Janice. The girl that
Janice.
Nobody knew who she was.
Calvin.
Did you actually think it was Calvin? He's such an obvious red herring.
Well, see, I thought it was a double bluff. I thought they were like.
Then who did you think Red Parrot was?
Yeah, it's very clever. It's very Knives Out of them.
Yeah. And I didn't. I'm not like so intimately familiar with the show that I knew Calvin was this recurring suspect.
Right.
Otherwise, I would have ruled him out. But yeah, the whole like him getting very emotional and writing this long poem for his deceased parrot. It's like, okay, he's like obfuscating something. This like we're learning something subtle about his character here.
Like maybe he killed the parrot in order to like sacrifice it to the hacker gods and get some sweet hacker skills out.
Or to appear like he never had a parrot and he pretended one died so he could like garner sympathy from the Ghostwriter team.
Ooh. That's dark, but I like it.
So yeah, for a second I did think it was Calvin, but then he became not obvious pretty fast.
Yeah, and when they reveal that it is Janice, they're surprised that she felt unseen, and I was like, you literally always say, "Oh, I didn't see you there." It's like, of course she feels unseen. You literally
maybe you're the problem, Ghostwriter kids.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a portion of an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer once. I didn't see the whole thing, but I knew the twist was the high school was being stalked by an invisible student, and it turns out they turned invisible because they were a wallflower.
Yeah,
like
they literally became invisible because they're metaphorically invisible.
There's like magic in this town, and they were ignored so long that they literally turned invisible. And then the twist at the end is they were recruited by the CIA.
Oh, I forgot about that. That was cute. Never followed up on that.
I don't suppose you need to, but
it would have been fun. Whatever. Introduce an element, play it back later. They introduced so many elements back into that show that no one gave a shit about. Why not bring back the invisible assassins?
So yeah, it was Janice the invisible girl this whole time, and she wanted to finally be seen.
Yes.
And that is actually kind of topical.
Yeah.
About sort of the students who aren't seen acting out and doing violence at their school. That's something that we'd see time and time again just a few years after this.
And before, we just wasn't talked about.
That's true. And these things were happening before. But that they're getting all of their charge from essentially living life and getting a new philosophy from online life was... well, I couldn't help but think of incidents like the Columbine massacre,
right?
About these people who are going online and finding new enclaves without any oversight, and developing these dangerous thoughts and being granted the means to do this harm.
Well, we're seeing that again to this day with things like QAnon and such, and that's it's actually like reasonably well thought out in terms of motive, in terms of actually addressing what online sort of life would be for young people as they try to find, because that's the thing in a positive way as well. The internet has allowed people to find communities and spaces. They're allowed to organize, realize that they're not alone, even if there aren't a lot of people in their town, community, school who they feel are like them. And that all of that is really, really great. And it's a shame that Max Mouse wasn't able to because apparently there's a small hacker community at Zora Neale Hurston School. There's that, what's the name of that kid? Calvin. There's Calvin.
Yeah,
there's
Calvin
Julia Stiles.
And Erica, yeah.
They should be hanging out at lunch. They have similar interests.
No, it's just online. It's you can't meet in person. What? Didn't you ever see You've Got Mail? You can't meet in person.
See, I was gonna say that the idea of only being seen online is also expressed by Erica. There is a scene, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, but when she is talking, about the hacker stuff. She goes to the computer and she kind of caresses the computer for a second, but she talks about the fact that online, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter, about any of those things. You can kind of be yourself. And so, she is also expressing these ideas. So yeah, I'm like, her and Janice.
It's a utopian idea of how the internet would work, but it is a nice thought.
Well, and that's what people were saying at the time, that this is what the internet is going to avail us. And when these sort of like scare tactic stories about using computers and using them for mischief and mayhem, they were seen as hopelessly naive, because at the time, a lot of people were using computers to find positive communities, but more than anything, just to kind of flirt and dick around. It wasn't seen as something really wholly dangerous yet, except for like maybe the fringe groups.
Yeah, the internet was still very much in its nascency. Yeah.
And yet all of these, and so at the time we dismissed these kinds of scare stories, like, no, technology is moving forward, let's just sort of adapt as we go. And yet from 2020, it all seems like these warnings were warranted.
Yeah. We should have listened. Why didn't we listen?
Why didn't we listen to kids shows from the 90s?
Ghostwriter, you tried to warn us.
Ghostwriter so much.
Ghostwriter.
Ian Softly just knew what he was talking about when he made that Hackers movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that really is the episode. Was there anything specific that you guys noticed that you do want to talk about?
Well, it's something that I didn't notice, actually, because again, I don't know how often the Ghostwriter mysteries or storylines involve actual crimes, but this is a crime. Someone is, putting false alarms at a school.
A kid is arrested. We didn't talk about that yet.
A kid is arrested. The other kids are being told they're being investigated by like the FBI. Like this is actually like an actual, and one kid is like framed for changing their grades. This is actual crimes.
I mean, I'm sorry we didn't mention it, but before they compete with Max Mouse, basically she gives each of them kind of a punishment if they lose. She threatens to basically smear Jamal's name and basically frame Lenny for her crimes.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm watching this and I'm seeing how the Ghostwriter team is like, I'm going to learn 3 vocabulary words this week, and next week I'll learn 3 more. Yeah. And we'll check out this bulletin board and we'll try playing this hacker game. And I'm like, what are the actual police doing? Now, granted, I don't expect the police are doing all that much, but we do find out that they are interested in this. Police actually do arrest someone.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the adults are doing to actually find out who is responsible for this?
No, because this is a kids show.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the name of the show.
We have to communicate to the kids that they can't handle this sort of thing on their own.
Right.
That's
fine.
They're in charge of the world, and that's a great thing to give to kids. They can actually, they're being taught that they have the wherewithal to take care of this stuff.
No, I'm totally down with the kids rule, adults drool brand of storytelling. That's fine. I don't mind it at all. But on some level, a storyline can cross a line and make me start wondering. Yeah. Like, again, if this was not so much criminality involved, it wouldn't have occurred to me. No. But because there is a lot of criminality, because we do know that the police are actually interested in investigating this on some level, I don't know. I always had this fantasy of like a bunch of like teen sleuths, work their butt off trying to like investigate the mystery of Old Man Withersby's junk shed or whatever. And they like go through this huge adventure, and then they go to the cops with all their evidence, and the cops, and again, this is putting a lot of faith in cops that I don't have, but just once I'd like someone to go to the cops with all their evidence, and the cops say, yeah, we figured that out.
We knew that.
We're detectives. It's our job. We did this already. We did a lot faster because we don't have like school to go to.
Did you ever see the movie Mystery Team?
No, I hear it's good though.
It's with John Glover, part of the
Donald Glover,
Donald Glover, excuse me, of the troupe he was part of. It's called Derek Comedy, and the premise of Mystery Team was it was about kid sleuths, kind of like in Ghostwriter. Sure. Who would help with like little mysteries around the neighborhood. It's like, we found who stole the cat. It was always pretty innocent stuff. The premise, though, is that they've grown into young adulthood and they still like have a little lemonade stand out front and we're going to solve neighborhood mysteries. That's all they know. And then a little girl says, I have a mystery for you. It says, okay, what do you want to do? And she says, can you find who killed my parents? And these like these young men who are, you know, completely unused to the adult world now have to like start going to like drug dens and stuff looking for murderers. It's not a great movie, but it's a great premise.
Fantastic premise. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing I think about sometimes when I watch this. So
I'm looking at Ghostwriter and I'm thinking that, you know, this is like their peak. These kids, they're solving.
You think it's all downhill from here? Like
exactly.
when they're in college, they're just going to be total burnout.
They're solving mysteries with a ghost that they can never tell anybody about. At some point, will the ghost leave them? Like, are they going to be solving mysteries when they're in their 50s?
Yeah, it's going to be like Ted. The ghost won't go anywhere, and it's going to be real annoying.
I will say that we've only seen one adult be able to see Ghostwriter, and she only saw him as it was only because she saw him as a child. So I don't know if they'll grow out of it or what.
So Ghostwriter's been around for a long ass time.
Yeah, I'm upset that it wasn't Greg Lee.
Yeah, what?
I was upset that it wasn't. Greg Lee is like he was a comedian and actor before he was a game show host, and he even gets to do a bit at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Or he gets up in front of a podium and says, "Okay, we don't want any computer discs," and he holds up a CD. Oh wait, that's not a computer disc. Yes, it is.
That made me laugh so hard. That made me laugh so hard. That was amazing. And then he folds up a floppy disk instead. That's a real disk. And I'm like, okay.
But, you know, he's like such a gregarious, approachable guy. Like, hey, kids, let's rap. And but I sworn that he was going to get involved with the actual ghost at some point.
Yeah, he really doesn't.
Maybe he's the ghost. And it's like Tenet, and he's moving backwards in time. So when he dies in like the final episode of the show, it just sort of starts moving backwards.
No, he's a lost soul. Like he doesn't have a soul anymore. He's just an empty, hollow shell of a man, and the ghost is now operating independently of him.
I love it.
Oh, and I recognized another actor too. The father character.
Oh yeah.
I had to look him up. He's an actor named Richard Cox.
Yeah, Richard Cox played
Richard Cox. I recognized him because he was the killer in the movie Cruising. That was a weird connection. It's like I'm watching this
spoilers for Cruising,
this kids show, and I was like, oh wait, that's the guy from Cruising.
Yeah. Oh, there you
go. A film that every kid should watch. He said sarcastically.
Yeah. All right. So as we've mentioned several times before. This show takes place in the 90s, and the 90s was an interesting time for fashion. So this is a little segment I like to call Ghostwriter Fashion. And as always, you can follow along on the Instagram page at the Flying Cow Pod on Instagram. So I originally started this because the character Lenny was always wearing these very interesting hats. So originally it was just about talking about her hats, but she started wearing less hats. So then we moved it into the fashion. But in honor of that, I always start with Lenny's hats. She's got a couple here. She is wearing in this first photo, her typical, kind of become her signature hat, the kufi.
It looks like a footstool on her head.
Yeah.
It looks like one of my grandmother's trivets.
Yeah, it's quite a pattern there, and then she's wearing a decorated vest of some kind as well. Hats and vests are really kind of.
Looks like she won a lot of medals for ghostwriting.
Yeah, it kind of does. She's highly decorated.
Yeah.
Don't give her like a sudden very hard hug because you'll just impale her.
Ah.
Very well could. All right, let's take a look at the next one. All right, so this one, like her outfit to me looks pretty normal. She's just wearing like a flower print dress, but that hat, it's a very bright red hat, and it's very attention getting, and it doesn't really kind of mesh with the rest of the outfit to me.
She probably bought it at a secondhand store.
I'm sure she does a lot of.
That's a Prince reference. You said that she's just sort of wearing a normal looking floral print dress, but keep in mind, it only looks normal because that kind of dress is back in fashion now.
True.
Like Lisa Loeb's look of the floral print dress and the docks and the big chunky glasses, that was in the 90s and then was out in the 2000s, and it came back now. There was a time when women's clothing got really kind of tight and restrictive.
Yeah.
Like starting in the late 90s, and wearing like a big flowery dress like that was considered really, really gauche.
Yeah, these are very roomy clothes.
Yeah,
Actually, everyone in the cast.
Oh yeah,
pretty much. It's
Yeah,
very
this is
loose fitting shirts.
This
Part
was
of me
the
wanted
baggy,
to just be like
the baggy era.
Part of me wanted to just yell at them like, "Tuck in your shirt, you heathens!"
Yeah.
But the one that never got me is the boys who wear shirts that are so large and roomy, the sleeves like almost droop past your fingers.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Like,
that's in reference to this next photo. There,
nice.
There is a shot. There's a far back shot where he's got his arms down, and you cannot see his hands. This is Alex in this huge green shirt. I mean, the shirt's bad enough, but then that vest. I mean, this is not a great photo, but that vest looks like it's made of plastic in this photo.
That is a like dirt green long sleeve shirt and a very grungy purple vest.
Yeah,
and
that's a Deep Space Nine costume.
Yeah,
that's like you know, the people in Starfleet uniforms would beam down and encounter like a tribe of people on a primitive planet, and they'd be wearing something like that.
But also, if you notice, and I didn't notice it at first, but the collar on this is not from the shirt; it's from the vest. It's a collared vest.
Wow,
it's so weird.
Well, the thing in the 80s was to wear like a collared jacket, but then rip the sleeves off.
Sure.
I think Michael Jackson popularized that, and so maybe this is just some sort of sad, distant echo of that look.
Yeah. But also the thing about the vest is, as big as that shirt is, that vest is actually bigger, because if you can see, the sleeves of the vest are hanging off the rest of it, and in that side profile, the armhole was like down to the middle of his shirt, like it was huge.
You know, you haven't taken into consideration the possibility that he might be shrinking.
That actually is a very good explanation. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look. Okay, so this is just a shot. I had to show a shot of Ghostwriter in cyberspace. That wonderful 90s graphics we were talking about.
I love that Ghostwriter looks like a Wi-Fi logo. Like this is before Wi-Fi had a logo, but like you can see it on my computer right here. And yeah, that's a Wi-Fi logo. So one of my theories early on, because I knew you wanted to talk about it, was that maybe Ghostwriter was like the internet. Like it was like the ghost of communication itself.
He seems to really enjoy the internet in this episode, flying through it.
He's really digging it. Yeah, it's very freeing for Ghostwriter. He doesn't have to just keep trying to make words off of whatever, billboards or whatever he can find. There's an interesting premise they introduce here, and I don't know if it's in other things, where they make little nests for Ghostwriter, where they like cut out like words that like are either calming or soothing or powerful or confident, and it's a place for Ghostwriter to live amongst like words.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting sort of exploration of, and I'm hesitant to call it a mythos, but Well,
yeah, I mean, Gabby does that in the episode, and this is the only episode I can remember them doing that. But yeah, when they first introduced the concept of Ghostwriter, like in the first episode, they made it seem like his identity was going to be this big mystery that we're going to constantly be trying to solve. And they really kind of dropped that pretty quick. I mean, they would still drop hints here and there as to like his character and things like that, but they weren't really as focused on that as they were, the kids and the mysteries and stuff like, and the education. But they still, there was a while there where they were really just using him as a tool. And starting in the second season, they really tried to give him more character traits and more, like you said, like kind of a mythos of, how he's feeling and things like that. Now, honestly, Gabby is the one character that always leads that charge. She is hugged Ghostwriter 3 times in various forms, and she's always the first one, because at the beginning of the episode, he gets kicked out of the internet, and she's the one that's like, I want to make sure he's okay. None of the other kids thought to do that. So, yeah.
They're jerks, yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about it, but it's kind of a joke.
That's not good enough, Alex.
I mean, Alex is usually the one leading that charge. But yeah, it's really the whole rest of the team. But yeah, let's...
So before you move past the picture, there's a little bit of binary on screen. It's just to, it's computer language. I just ran that through a binary translator.
Oh, no.
And that is either the number 5.
Okay.
Or a left-leaning left-leaning accent mark, a grave accent mark.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Here, okay.
Well, I learned something.
Here, I've just got a collection of photos of Julia Stiles' look as Erica in her very 90s skater-looking gear.
Which,
look, it's a cool look. Can we all agree on that?
And she pulls it off. It's just, it's very, they haven't presented a character with that look, so it definitely stands out in the rest of the show.
But it doesn't feel like a total poser kind of thing where they're just trying to come up with a look. It feels like she's actually pulling off that look.
Yeah, and if it looks a little awkward, we can chalk it up to the facts that, these characters are all 13 and they don't really know how to, they're just figuring out how to be hip.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to express themselves, and sometimes you take big swings when you're young and you try fashion choices or hairstyles or whatever that you think are going to be really awesome and say a lot about you, and then maybe you come to regret them or you've nuanced them over time. But again, this is a character who has actually like forged her own identity in a school where mostly the kids are just kind of nice.
I'd take these kids over something like in Saved by the Bell, where nobody has any like each one of has one personality trait.
Yeah, they're very shrill. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
All right, well, let's take a look. Okay, so I had to click because it's such a cheesy kids show 90s shot. We didn't talk about the fact that Hector, in addition to his bully subplot, also has a subplot where he learns how to use the library. Which is really funny because the person helping him is Gabby, who literally did the same thing 2 episodes before.
With the same character.
Gabby, this is actually only the second story Hector has been in.
Okay.
So, and Hector has always been one of those characters. I mean, it's an interesting situation because the character is supposed to be the youngest character on the show, even though the actor is actually the same age as the rest of the older cast. So just because he's smaller, he's playing younger. But because of that, I think they pitch him lower, younger than he really comes across. Like in the last episode, he was saying things like, I like trucks. And it's like, okay, are you 8 or 5? Not really sure.
Right. Yeah. Understood. I liked when he applies to get his library card and they're like, all we need is some sort of proof of your address. And they just said anything where your address is written down on it is fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not really good evidence. He's like, I have it on an envelope. And I'm like, you can have anything on an envelope. Like every envelope has an address on it. You just throw you just lie.
True.
Yeah. And that's how all this library fraud happened.
Yeah, because they're really worried about that in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, this shot just made me laugh, so I had to. And I think that is it for right now. So now we are ready to move into our top suspect, and this is the part of the show where basically it is. Anybody on the show that just was your favorite. It can be a lead, it can be a side character, an extra, it can even be Ghostwriter if you want. So who was you guys' top suspect?
Julia Stiles.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Julia Stiles gets to berate a child for not reading Neuromancer yet. That's enough.
Sure.
That's enough for me. She's so convinced of her cyberpunk cred that it's just absolutely hilarious, but it's still kind of genuine. Like, I knew people who in school had like just learned of a thing a week ago and are now like very haughty about it and are just trying to tell everybody like, oh yeah,
you heard of this band Led Zeppelin?
Yeah,
man, Led Zeppelin, you don't know real music, man.
Yeah,
I just discovered this band. They're brand new.
Talking like an authority.
She's got that energy though, and I really, really liked her a lot. And and I think it's a welcome. Everyone else has such a goody two shoes kind of vibe that to have someone who's at least trying to be kind of badass and almost getting away with it is very special to me. So yeah, it's got to be Julia Stiles.
I've always appreciated a good show though where they don't rely on cool. Because we all grew up in the 90s, and that's when they were really trying to sell cool as like the central ethos of everything. And this is a show, I mean, this is a show, at least in my market, ran on public television. It was meant to be kind of educational, which meant cool was not part of it. And
no, but it was very distinctly uncool.
But I always appreciated things that tried to get a lot of mileage out of being completely uncool, because that's the stuff I liked. I was busy over here watching kids game shows about geography and getting a big thrill out of the a cappella theme song. It's like I'm not daring enough to go to like punk shows. I wouldn't be for like at least another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've randomly said, "Do it, rockapella," and nobody else gets it.
And you hear Barry Carl. Yes, I know the names of the members of rockapella.
There you go. So is the same top suspect for you, Whitney, or do you have a different one?
Well, like I said, I thought they were really trying to bluff me. So it seemed almost obvious to me that it was going to be Julia Stiles.
Okay.
And so and they were putting so much like fake looking groundwork in front of Calvin that I thought they were going to pull a fast one on us and have it actually be Calvin.
Right.
Now, if I had known Calvin was a recurring character, then I would not have thought that at all. But I'm not familiar enough with the show to have picked up on that.
All right. I mean, for me, it was also, it was Julia Stiles as Erica. I just, like I said, I just feel like she's working so hard to make this character work. And I think she's fun. But yeah. All right. So then the next is, the rewind moment. This is the moment in the show. And this is actually, this episode was the birth of the phrase rewind.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The way they said it, I thought it was like a thing they said every single week.
Well, like I think
rewind.
It was actually I think it was introduced by the guy that does the recaps before, but this is the first time that they introduced it like in the show proper. And
so it's all
from here on, it will be rewind, and it's like, hey, that's nice. A thing now. All right.
I'm honored that we get to do this episode. We get to be part of history.
The watershed moment.
Yeah. So this is the moment in the episode that was either your favorite or just the moment that made you go, what was that? So what do you guys think?
I admit a weakness. Like, I actually felt a little bit of tension when the ghost was surfing the web.
It's like the end of Lawnmower Man,
Yeah. I got a good Lawnmower Man vibe off of it. There was a scene in one of the Jack Ryan movies where somebody was like trying to upload something onto a disc, and somebody else was like figuring out where they were on a different computer, and all of this was very novel because it was about the same time this TV series was running, and the filmmakers really managed to like squeeze tension over the fact that it's just two guys sitting in front of computers. And I felt the same way about sort of the ghost that we got to. Yeah, you very rightfully said it. Yeah, it looks like the center of the Prodigy logo or something. Sort of surfing through and applying passwords and getting through this big cyber tunnel. I thought that was just a fun visual dynamic to have in this otherwise pretty stead show about kids solving mysteries at a junior high school.
Sure. I guess if I'm being 100% honest, it's just Julia Stiles' Neuromancer monologue, but that feels like a cheat since I already did it. Yeah. So I'm going to, I actually did kind of like the training sequence towards the end of the episode where they know that they're going to play Max Mouse at this game Ghost,
Ghost
in like a day or two. And they are all training on this game to get good at. I'm a sucker for a good training montage.
Yeah.
It felt like I was watching like a heist film where like we got to like, can we do this hairpin turn in less than 0.2 seconds or something? Yeah. And if we can finally do it, then huzzah, maybe we like, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it works.
Sure.
So I was fine with it.
Well, and
I dug it.
And in that scene, Tina actually beats Ghostwriter. So, I mean, what does that mean if you beat a word being at a word game? That's like got to be a transcendent moment.
Oh my God, maybe she's the real Ghostwriter. It's like remember in the original Matrix when they told Neo that he wasn't the one, and then towards the end of the film when he's fighting off a bunch of dudes, and Carrie-Anne Moss whips out a gun and says "dodge this" and then kills one of the agents. I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, she's the one. Oh, what a cool twist!" And then it turns out no, he's the one, and it was just not very well articulated plot point. So like maybe it means Tina's the real Ghostwriter here.
The Ghostwriter is the friends we met along the way.
No, it's not.
All right. So my moment, and honestly, this goes right back into our fashion segment because we mentioned the scene where they're running around the school looking for the bulletin board that they're supposed to meet Max Mouse on. And during that little scene where they're running around, Lenny walks up to one and she just randomly sees this picture and says, "Ooh, I love that hat." And I was just like, that is so on brand for Lenny. That's just so right on the nose for her.
That's the kind of thing I wouldn't have noticed because we've only seen this episode.
Right.
But that's cute. Yeah.
Right. All right. So, yeah, the last couple of things, we've already been talking a little bit about what you guys think Ghostwriter might be. But my question is, if Ghostwriter were real and he wrote to you, would you write back? And if so, what would you say?
How is he contacting me? Is he like sending me like unsolicited messages on Twitter or Instagram, or how is he doing?
I mean, normally he would like write words to people. Like, I mean, this was obviously before. I think the first time he appeared to Jamal, it was on a computer screen. But some people, it was just like random notes, sometimes on paper, sometimes in the air. So it really depends.
See, I would assume that I had lost my mind.
Yeah, sure.
You started seeing these words floating.
Yeah, I'm always scared. I'm just gonna like just take that last step, and I'm just gonna start, seeing things that aren't there.
Well, what if Ghostwriter appeared to you and I simultaneously, and we both saw it?
Well, yeah, but we're on the same wavelength, though. If we were gonna go,
we're
gonna lose our grip on reality. We do it at the same time.
One of us is going mad. We're both going mad.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but we could go mad together and start. Fun. If I recognize this as like something kind of fanciful and I was invited to solve minor mysteries, I would say I would go for it. Absolutely. Just say, oh no, like one of your neighbors is missing, a package. Somebody's stealing mail from the building. And it's like, which is actually a problem in this neighborhood.
It is actually, it sucks. Yeah.
But
get on that, solve that. What are you doing?
Yeah, if like a mystical voice said something very important is happening, figure out this mystery of who's stealing these packages. It'll be like, yeah, sure, give me a shot of gin and I'll be right on it.
I don't know, man. That sounds like a lot of work. Don't you have any plucky kids to bother with this? They're so motivated. Like, I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is a reason that he appeared to children, because a little easier to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a very common trope in fantasy fiction, that children are more willing to accept the strange and unusual.
Oh God, wouldn't you love to see like a historical fiction about like Elliot Ness? He's tracking down the Untouchables, like he's doing some really legit investigation, and then this like fanciful ghost appears to him one night and says the neighbor's cat is missing, and he gets completely sidetracked looking for the neighbor's cat.
I love it.
He gets involved in this fanciful kid mystery.
Love it. Let's do it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Writes itself.
Just a radio script idea right there. Okay.
There you go. All right. So, like I said, the identity of Ghostwriter was meant to be like a running thing. They did come up with an identity, but they were never actually able to work it in. The show was actually canceled in the middle of the third season, and it was never revealed. However, they did eventually have an interview in which the identity of Ghostwriter was revealed. Would you guys like to hear it?
I would very much like to hear it. Yes, thank you.
So, Ghostwriter producer and writer Kermit Frazier revealed in a 2010 interview that Ghostwriter was...
Oh my God!
Wow. I don't know about that.
So,
I mean,
so it's a sequel to a Tarantino movie. This is
it's that's a big old can of worms. Like, we're just learning about hacker stuff. Let me tell you what Ghostwriter is really about. They're like, this isn't really fun anymore. It's actually just dark and disturbing and makes me think about how messed up the world is. Funny enough, it reminds me of the 100 Lives of Blackjack Savage.
Yeah.
So thank you for inviting us to explore this thing that we both were only tangentially even aware of, really.
Yeah. Lurking around, give me a chance to taste something that I had left behind so long ago.
Yeah, no problem. And I want to thank you guys so much for being on here. And real quick, I just first want to go ahead and give our listeners the opportunity to get in contact with the podcast if they want to. I am the Flying Cowpod on everything. Twitter, Instagram, theflyingcowpod@gmail.com is my email. And feel free to reach out if you have any thoughts or opinions or anything you want to say. Let me know. And William and Whitney, this is you guys' opportunity to plug anything. I know you guys got a bunch of stuff, so feel free to...
we do a lot of things. Whitney and I are the co-hosts of the Critically Acclaimed Network, which is a podcast feed with a lot of different shows. There's our flagship show, Critically Acclaimed, where we review new movies. There's Canceled Too Soon, where we review TV shows that lasted only one season or less. There's a mailbag episode called We've Got Mail. There's a show called Episode Zero, where we look at the prehistory of pop culture phenomena and look at all of the various films that inspired stuff like Star Wars or Rocky Horror Picture Show is what we're on right now. And of course, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/critically acclaimed network, where we have a lot of exclusive content, including a show called Holy Batman, in which we review every single episode of the live action 1960s Batman. All Our Yesterdays, where we're reviewing every single episode of Star Trek ever. Only the Best, we're reviewing every single film ever nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Not on Disney Plus, where we talk about stuff that is not on Disney Plus, but probably should be. We do commentary tracks and other stuff as well. I'm very tired. All the time. I'm very tired.
It is our lot to never stop working.
But yeah, we're on Twitter at Critic Acclaim. I myself am at William Bibbiani.
I'm at Witney Seibold.
There you go.
All right. And like I said, thank you guys so much for doing this. This has been great. So much fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And I will be back next time with an episode where Lenny shoots a music video, oddly enough.
Oh, we missed a good one.
Tons of Lenny songs in that one. So, like I said, check us out then. Until next time, Ghostwriter out!
Wake up and smell the cyber funk.